So, very, very warm welcome to everybody. I think yes, that's it. Welcome to this, I'm not sure, I think maybe the fourth in our series of 8 teachings on the transformation of many, many things, but in particular, the elements, the prime elements, into the Buddha wisdoms and the Buddha families. So the course is called From Poison to Nectar. So let's start with, in the very, very best way, with a good motivation, so that during the next hour and a half, we make really wonderful karma together. The beautiful bond of Dharma and the power of Dharma, which is just so different from worldly things. So an hour and a half of teachings with a good motivation. I don't know how many points it scores, but it's pretty good. So we need to start with, and ideally keep it all the way through, a heart full of loving care for all of our fellow beings, very, very specially for those who've been part of our own lives, who are part of our karma, and who are part of our mind inside our mindscape. But for every being in a universe without end, larger than we could ever even begin to imagine, and not a universe of rocks and space and planets and stars and constellations, but a universe of hearts and minds, beings, billions upon trillions of them, each in their own world, just like us. So we're here for them. We're the lucky ones who have the Dharma, and so we make our good motivation with our prayers. And can you tell me, just put a hand up, no need to turn the microphone on. Is the sound okay? I feel like my voice is quite soft. Good? Okay, thank you, microphone. You're very helpful. Sonje chodan soji chonamla chancho badu dane chapsanche. Dagi jinso jipe sunamje drola penchira sanje droparasho. Semchen tamche dewa dang dewe jodang dempara juchi. Dungal dang dungal ji jodang dralwara juchi. Dungal mepe dewa dampa dang dralwara juchi. Nierin chadan netang dralwe. Tanyom chempola nepara jurechi. Deyata shame shamawati shameta shachu om gurimam gurimarajite karota ke orita juwati oluyane pishuda nimale malapanaye kukure kaka grase om mukhi para mukhiya mukhi shamedawane savagraha bandhanane Negrita savaba paravadina Vimukta mara pasha saveta Bauddha mudra Anugatita savamare Butsarita parishude Vega shantu savamara kamani. Halen sawe lama rinpoche, dagi chewara pende denshola. Kajin chempo kone jizonte, kuson tujin hadruk sadhu. So, where to start? I'm thinking to start by going back to the beginning. There are different ways of teaching. Sometimes you just do it, A, B, C, D, beginning to end, structured. Sometimes you keep going back to the beginning, then adding a little bit more, and going back to the beginning and adding a little bit more. That's very useful for a new topic, so that gradually a familiarity with it falls into place. So far, we've been looking at the Vajra family to the east in front of us, and purifying anger and so on. And then in the last session, we went to the Ratna family, to our right, to the south, and purifying all these things which are meant by the Tibetan term ngajal, which is translated in a very limited way as pride. So we looked at that, but I'd like to go back to the beginning, and now I'd like to, I hope you all got it during the week, a bubble diagram, they're called, to help with these teachings. But I'd like to start with another very poor little drawing I did. Now let's see if I can find it. Oh dear, just a second, I will be there. 22 over 3, 90. This one. Okay. Can you put a hand up if you can see this? Can you see a drawing? Yes, good. Thank you. So, there we are. So this is a funny little drawing, but it's to explain the general principle. So in the center, you can see, now that's you, or it could be me, or it could be any of us, right? And it's a little person, a little meditator. And that person is in sort of a little house. I've taken away one side of the house so that we can see the person, right? That house is the house of consciousness, what we call our consciousness stream, which at the moment is all we're experiencing. So like a house, this is a house without any windows most of the time. It's a house with walls. So when you're in the house, you can only see the walls. So you can see there's a yellow wall and there's a red wall and there's a green wall. And the blue wall, which is on our side, is missing. It's so we can see the person in the house. But then you can see actually outside the house, in each of the directions, there are the Buddhas of the directions, and I put in the elements as well. Now they're always there. The house of consciousness is in fact an illusion. It's like when we're asleep and when we're dreaming, even though we're really a human body in a bed, we could be dreaming we're a hedgehog in a field. You're not really a hedgehog, although while you're dreaming it, for that moment, you'll think you're a hedgehog in a field. It's very real until you wake up. So this house of consciousness is a non-stop stream of consciousness. The non-stop is very important. And we call that samsara. Our mind is locked into everyday consciousness and the things it brings up, thoughts, experiences of the five senses, seeing and hearing and smelling and tasting and touching, and memories and plans for the future, all the images we carry, our ability to think, to compute, to analyze, all of that, so much more, as we've studied in other courses, is this non-stop stream of consciousness. But all the time, we're in this limited and limiting house of consciousness. The truth of who we are, like the woken up person, is there. And the way it's taught, the way great masters experience it, is in terms of the directions, although what's in all of those five directions, the four cardinal directions and above us, is actually one thing. And we experience one thing in four manifestations, four aspects. But it's just to show this general principle that's behind all of this series of teachings. It's very, very important that you get this, what we're studying. And we mustn't fall into the traps. We must see the general point. Now let's go to our person in the house of consciousness there. It's not all bad in relative terms. It's not all bad. In our terms, there's good in it and there's bad in it. So in the first or second of the series, then we saw that the blue wall, which is gone, we looked at it in terms of the mind poison that's there, hostility, anger, irritation, frustration, self-pity in a way, and all of the variants of this aspect of the poisoned mind, which is hostility. Now, in regular Dharma practice, in the relative world, of course, we can gradually change hostility to loving care. But loving care is still in the prison house of consciousness. It's in a world that's dualistic, where there's you loving and caring for somebody else. That's still the limited and limiting house of consciousness. And what we're really seeing is here the Vajrayana picture, the deeper Buddhist picture, where everything is perfect all the time, always has been, always will be, but the most important thing, right now. Right now. Everything's perfect. Problem is, we can't see it, we can't know it. So what we're looking at in this course is beyond hostility and its relative counterpoint, loving care, there is the natural presence of Akshobhya Buddha, the mirror-like wisdom in which all of the hostile and all of the loving universe is present. We're looking at what's outside the prison of consciousness, which is like the Buddha said, a dream, which is like a mirage. When the mirage goes, and it never was in the first place, when the rainbow goes, when the dream goes, we see what was always there. So this general principle is very, very, very important. Now let me take away I did this drawing very quickly. I can do a bit better than that, but that was done late last night, so it's not terrific. Okay, thank you very much for that one. So once we've got the general principle, you'll know that we were in our first Buddha family, the Vajra family, we were looking at hostility. But then one of the traps I want to avoid is making this course an ego reinforcing course. When we look at the Buddha families, it's not so that you can say, oh, I'm a typical Vajra person, or I'm a typical Padma family person, and reinforce your ego, or however it is. Of course, those teachings are there, and you'll find them. You'll find some of them online, some of them in books, and they're very nice, and they're very well done, and they're very, very useful. From Chujam Trungpa Rinpoche, for instance, in his book, Myth of Freedom, is quite nice, but he overdoes the caricatures. So he paints a picture of a Ratna family person. It's not a very nice picture. And considering that, I mean, all of us have all the families really, but some of us do fall very much into one type or another. To say that all Vajra family people are like the way Trungpa Rinpoche caricatures a vivid stereotype, that's not true. He wanted, because most of the teachings of his in books, they're his lectures, transcribed much later on. So he was talking to a room full of people. He wanted to get the point across. And so he made a very kind of, vivid picture. And but there's much more to it than that. So I want to avoid the trap of painting worldly caricatures, stereotypes, so that we can start to think, oh yeah, there's a bit of that in me, and oh, if that's the poison in that one, no, I don't do that very much, but my husband does, or my wife does. Where we start labeling people, which when we come to the Vajra family is the whole problem. It is the way we bring all of our prejudgments, our stereotypes. So with that Vajra family, excuse me a second. We are, if you remember, we're with the water element. And the water element is very much related to winter in the seasons, or to the dark of the night. Somehow, through all of this life's experience, karma, and then past lives, we have a particular mindset that sees the world in a certain way. It sees good, it sees bad. This developed a set of definitions, and then it kind of talks itself into these definitions. And just to give you an example of views, preconceived ideas, in the last couple of years, for contentious issues like vaccination, for it or against it, or like now with the Ukraine war that's going on, some people are, how can you say, in agreement with what's in the news, what's in the Western news. Other people think all of that's propaganda and that Russia's in the right. And what you find is that through the way people go online, there's this thing called confirmation bias, where you, once you get into one idea, then you start looking at related websites that tell you similar things, and the ideas become concretized. But anyway, we've all kind of done that one way or another. So with the Vajra family, we're looking at the way that makes us feel hostile, antithetic to our fellow beings, and all of the problems that produces. So what we're trying to do is seeing beyond our hostility, our separation, our criticism, to see beyond its opposite, which is loving your enemies and appreciating and going through the wall of all of our Vajra family conditioning a meeting Akshobhya Buddha, who's been the real you. This is not Buddha somebody else. This is the real you that understands at last. Everyone's in their world. From the frog going in the garden, to you, to the people you meet, to the Russians, to the Ukrainians, to the people getting vaccinated and the people not getting vaccinated. Everybody's in their own world. There is no right and wrong. There is no real version. The only truth is that each person is living within their own truths. Beyond this person's idea of true and that person's idea of true, it's not as though there's a real true. This is very deep. Has to be deep. We're talking about Buddha. Beyond our consciousness, which is struggling just now. To understand this, we're using thoughts, memories, our own experience, everything inside our stream of consciousness to try and understand something that's not our stream of consciousness. It's very deep. If I could tell you in words and ideas that related to your experience what Buddha Akshobhya is like, it wouldn't be Buddha Akshobhya. Couldn't be. So it's a wisdom, a mirror-like wisdom, in which everybody's world with their values and their own truth and lies and black and white and right and wrong and good and bad and all of this is there. It's not only there, but the whole story of it throughout time. Why does this person experience the world in this way, with these values, and hence is at odds with other people, with certain circumstances? Why? The whole history is there. Not only that, in Buddha's Akshobhya's mirror-like wisdom, their whole future is there. How will they get out of it? How will they get a bit out of it and fall back in and get back and fall back in? I have a very, very dear friend in Africa, older than me, who has a Dharma center. A couple of years ago, he was out working and he fell into a septic tank. That's not nice. And this is a person in his 80s. There's a hatch and he'd fallen in. He's in the shit, sort of up to there, and he had to get out, otherwise he's dead. So it took him a lot, many, many tries to try and pull himself up. Fortunately, in the end, he did, and he got out. So I think Buddha Akshobhya sees all of us in samsara, and we get out a bit and we fall back in a bit, and we get out a bit more and we fall back in a bit more, but we will get out. So this mirror-like wisdom, I'm trying to use words to explain to you, is totally natural and spontaneous. It's there right now, and it's you. It's you and me. That's who we truly are. So I've been very pleased because since these talks started, 3 people on our course have privately told me I started to do what's in Patrul Rinpoche's 5 verses that I shared with you. Whatever it was I was getting, angry or lustful, and I looked straight at what was going on. It couldn't get me like it normally does. I just tried to find it, looked at it, and it dissolved. This is the beginning. When we start to look at our consciousness mind directly with the eyes of meditation in the living moment, then when we break through, it's like punching a hole in that wall of the house of consciousness. You see through. And then where you've been in the stay with Vajra family, in your fixed ideas and criticizing somebody because they didn't ought to do that, or they ought to do this, and that's wrong, or whatever it is, as those voices in your head, as those thoughts, as those feelings, as the anger, as the irritation, whatever it is present, you just be with it and see through it. And then there's just an endless universe of minds and hearts, totally created by their karma. They could not be anything else. This war could not be anything else if we believe in karma. Or COVID, or any of those things. There's a deep wisdom that understands this beyond all the interpretations that humankind has made, like, God gave us this to do. This was, the story God wrote for you, your life. Or like for some Hindu schools, predestination, karma, you can't do anything about it. It's all written. We're just living through it. So the Buddha's view is very deep, very, very true. It proves itself through experience. So with Buddha Akshobhya, we're going beyond the anger and the love to a state of perfect understanding of isness. And because there is that isness which breaks through all the mind structures, not just the fixed ideas, then there is clarity. So Patrul Rinpoche said this: when your anger manifests by itself, and then we are aware of it with intelligence, and it disappears by itself. This clarity about what is going on, that clarity is the mirror-like wisdom. So anyway, we spent some time with that, and so then we went on to the Ratna family. Now, whereas the Vajra family was about the water element, if you did the elements course, then you'll remember the water element is not about water and all the very nice analogies we can make around water. It can be ice, it can be steam, and so on. But it's not about water. It's about the water element, which is us relating, relationships, connections, how we relate to things. And in the case of the Vajra family, the poison is we relate with hostility. Things upset us, we clash with things, we're at odds with things. So the purity is about making the right connection with everybody in the Vajra family. The right connection is to know that everyone, you, me, a frog, a hedgehog, any sentient being, is by nature Buddha. So from relating in a dualistic, egotistic way, we relate in a way of wisdom, which is heart to heart. You are Buddha inside. Everybody else is Buddha. We all have, it's like one heart, the same heart. In which there's no hatred. And there's not really even love, because if it's the one heart, how could there be? There's nobody else to love. There is just natural compassion for the ignorance that makes separation. So anyway, dealing with universals, we went on to the Ratna family. And there the obscuration, now this really is the word. Go back to our little person in the house with the walls, who's confining things, that obscures, blocks off what's really there. So the obscuration for this Ratna family is, we use the word pride, But really it means that we are identifying with our wealths, because Ratna means jewel or wealth. Whatever wealth our past karma has brought us, material wealth, knowledge wealth, friendship and connection and sort of sociability wealth. Some people are just amazing, how can you say, networkers. Whatever riches we have through the blessings of our karma from the past, they are the results of karma, which means, great, they're there, but they won't be there forever. They are the results of causes. However big the causes were, that's how much the results will last. But if we identify with them, and fall asleep in them, then identify means we think that's who I am. I am the university professor. I am the man with the antique car. I'm the woman with the most beautiful rose garden in the south of England. You know, whatever you have. And that can get ridiculous, because if it's a bank statement, it's just numbers on a piece of paper. And nevertheless, whatever it is, then our identity is formed by that, which means that we become very vulnerable. When the riches go, when something changes, if it's to do with your partner, for instance, that's a sort of a wealth, a relationship wealth from past karma and so on. And people change. They come and they go. In one Mila Repa song, he said, at first she's like an angel, but she ends up like a devil, criticizing you all the time. And the same the other way around. Man, woman, doesn't really matter. So when the wealth goes, we hurt. We're looking at this ngajal, which is a sense of entitlement, very strong in us humans, and identifying with possessions, with wealth, with social status, with what you've got, with what you do. The Queen's of England is very famous in her garden parties. When she meets somebody, it's, hello, what do you do? And it's like, what do you do defines you. I'm a sailor, I'm a candlestick maker, and whatever it is. We are defined through that wealth of knowledge, skill, or possessions. Or I own about half of Scotland, I think. I can't really remember what we have. Defines us. And so part of this, in the mind poisons, we talk a lot about pride as one of the 5 poisons, but this also includes part of attachment. We are attached. Really, that means we identify with what we have. If we don't identify with it, easy come, easy go, we just understand. That's what happens. Good days, bad days, good years, bad years, good lives, bad lives. It's karma. It's karma. But so that's the ignorance, that's the war. And of course, we can be attached to our wealth and glorify ourselves in our wealth. So sometimes when we describe the Ratna family person, then we see someone who can be very generous, can be very, how can you say, voluminous. And they're, welcome to my huge world. And like I said last time, borrow the car, use the swimming pool whenever you want, that kind of. It can be ample and generous. It can be mean and wealthy, but whatever it is, we identify with it. So with the Ratna family, what we are trying to do is to go beyond the duality, to go beyond attachment and a sense of entitlement, or its opposite, which is a generosity and an ability to give your stuff, to give of yourselves. So generosity is very important here. It's true. But actually, of all the paramitas, when we look more closely, right conduct, Shila, is the most important. Right conduct. Because how you get your wealth and what you do with your wealth. Wealth, very often, I'm sure you've seen it, money is poison. They say, well, money isn't poison. Money is money, whatever it is. Notes, a credit card, in the old days, coins, material to barter, it just is what it is. It's not good, it's not bad. It's what we do with it and what it does to us that's really the problem. So if through the power of past karma, we have wealths in all the areas of wealth, then how we use that and what we let it do to us or don't let it do to us is very important. If you're poor in all the senses, you don't have that problem. But once life, and let's look at it very deeply, once life is being kind to you, it's richer for you. This is the time when right conduct and ethics and deeper thinking about, okay, I'm on a good time here. How to use that? How would Buddha use that? How would a bodhisattva use that? And how not to either misuse it or to get attached to it or to just let it make you become a sleepy zombie, a samsara zombie, where you're just consuming and enjoying and so on. So we want to go beyond those, the two opposites. Where are we going? Now, Buddha Ratna Sambhava. Buddha Ratna Sambhava. It's quite interesting. We study the mudras for these Buddhas. So with the Vajra family to the east in front of us, then if you remember, the Buddha has the left hand, it's not on screen, but it's below the navel, and the right hand is on the knee, touching the earth, calling the earth to witness. So now we go to Ratna Sambhava. The left hand stays the same in the meditation posture, but the right hand turns outwards on the knee. And that gesture is called generosity, giving, is bestowing. So, sorry, I can't quite bend it up this high. I'm not going to do any more gymnastics. But anyway, you can see it in the picture in your support document. But although that's that mudra of generosity, if you remember from the paramita teachings, generosity doesn't so much mean giving as giving up. So if it's not too confusing, on a dualistic level, once we recognize that we do have a sense of entitlement, that we are attached to our standard of living, we are used to having the very best lavender honey on our porridge in the morning, and any other honey doesn't quite seem good enough, or whatever it is. Once we've got this used to sense of entitlement, so it feels unfair if we lose any of our riches. We see that sense of entitlement. If we see ourselves as a sort of Deva realm human who is just cruising on the power of past karma, what do they call it in English? Resting on your laurels. So sometimes it's called pride. Pride comes before a fall. If you're just running out your karma, like somebody on a spree using up all the money in their bank account, it's great while it lasts, relatively. But then afterwards, empty pockets, nothing left. So on a relative dualistic level, if we recognize that we have this gnajal, sense of entitlement, and so on and so on, then on a relative level, we practice generosity. On a relative level, the practice of generosity with what we have, while we still have it, is making more generosity so that you'll have some more later on. I didn't explain that very well, but it's like good investment. You want to make good karma with the good karmic results you're experiencing so that at least you can continue, and that will be a very wonderful support for your Dharma practice. It will enable us to help others in the future. So a good investment of our qualities, but all of that's on the relative level. You and others, duality. Worse samsara, better samsara. What we're looking at here with Ratna Sambhava is the wisdom of sameness. Sameness. Very hard to describe the wisdom of sameness, like the mirror-like wisdom, very hard to describe. It doesn't mean simply that everything's the same, but let me give you a relative example. It's not really how it is for your Buddha mind, your true mind, but a relative example. Let's say that you love gemstones and you're particularly enamored by sapphires. And you have one or two beautiful specimens of sapphires that are in your house, or maybe on a ring that you have. But you know that, oh gosh, there is this 35 carat sapphire that's in Topkapi Museum. And you just think, oh, if I had that, and you dream of it. And then one day, you're just out walking and you sit down and you look at the ground and there's some sand and you just see one crystal of sand reflecting the sunlight. And you realize there's no difference in the beauty of that sand grain and the sapphire. So this can really happen. It's a beautiful liberation for a Buddhist, because then you have so much richness every moment of your life through mindfulness. Every step you take, everything you touch, every smell. Strange things happen to yogis. You can have what before was the most delicious food and it tastes like vomit, not because there's something wrong with it, and then you could eat vomit and it would taste like the most delicious food. I remember once, a long time ago, having an experience of vomiting, actually, but in let's say, a heightened state of mind. It was such a wonderful experience. It was as beautiful as anything I'd ever experienced. It was sort of the flow of it coming out, and just every moment was pure bliss. And at the same time, I was retching, It's very strange. So with experience, on a relative level, these kind of things can happen. But when we come to Buddha Ratna Sambhava, we're not just talking about seeing a sameness in everything, but a sameness in everyone. It's like the mirror-like wisdom, in a way. Everyone's in their own world. And so many times you'll hear Tibetan Rinpoches when they teach telling you, everyone's like you and me. Everyone wants happiness. Nobody wants suffering. So, A human's happiness is eating fresh asparagus. A dog's happiness is eating feces. It's very interesting creatures, dogs. They love rolling in horse manure, and that kind of thing is their happiness. Every being's in their own world, and we start to feel this sameness. But more deep than that, why is it the same? Because we have this one heart, this one mind. And the other person is no longer an other person. They are a you in a you, which is the endless expanse of beings. Everybody is our body. Everybody's world is our world. And there is a tremendous equanimity. So with Buddha Ratna Sambhava, the wisdom is the wisdom of sameness, but it comes from this equanimity, equality, which is the nature, the golden nature of Buddha Akshobhya. So the giving or the generosity is the giving up of associating wealth with this or with that. The true wealth is the wealth of Buddha mind, the only one truth that we all share is the same. That's the deepest wealth, and all of the rest is very, very relative. Now, I also sent you, and I must do that because time's ticking by. Now I want to share another image, and this is this one that I sent you. Full screen. Can you put a hand up if you can see it? Yeah, thank you. So it's a very similar diagram to my funny one of the person in the house. But here the obscurations are shown as clouds. Clouds which can cover everything up, but then also because they're so fine, they can so easily be dispelled, and all of a sudden the clouds part and you see the mountain. I don't know if you've ever been to Tenerife, or rather to the island opposite Tenerife, because the big, big mountain, Tede, is so often completely hidden in cloud. And then some days the cloud parts and you've got this very, very nice sort of like a child's drawing mountain, triangular mountain. Clouds come apart. So now let's revisit the Vajra family and the Ratna family to find things that are more universal. The clouds for the Vajra family is, I know. Our knowledge, our values, the way we view the world. It's the knowing that's important. So then how can, in practice, when we find ourselves opinionated and judging, evaluating this person, what they're doing, this on the news, what's happening. Hostility and loving care on a relative level, not Buddhist loving care, go together. There couldn't be hostility if there wasn't loving care there. Complementary qualities. So whenever we find ourselves in our water element, in our connections with other people, falling into partiality, because behind it, if we have good meditation, you'll feel the way the mind, through all of your own history, all of your own story, everything you learned, what your parents gave you, and past life stuff, you are putting that person in a definition, in a box. You're judging, you're reacting. We're doing this all the time. Water element is at work. Our relationship, our connection with other people is there and fixed. It's making you limited, and it's limiting how you can interact with the other person. So then when we find that, we can stop in our tracks, cut through, jump across it, go beyond the cloud, and there find this mirror-like wisdom where just everyone is everyone. How could they be anything else given all the karma behind them? And then we come to the Ratna family, the yellow one, yellow and gold. The obscuration is this sense of pride and entitlement and so on with I have what we have. And it's to do with, that's the earth element. The earth is the ground that supports us. It's where we are rooted. So if we're rooted, our identity, in stuff or in prowess, whatever you have as your richness of you, then it's like a house built on sand, built on a bog, not stable. So whenever we find our najal, we're enjoying your whatever it is, wealth, nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it. And we can use it and share it and offer it up. Of course, on a relative level, we have many Dharma practices for positive, helpful use of our wealth, our resources, our skills, and so on. But here, when we find our consciousness mind through the power of habit, limiting ourselves with a familiar relationship with our wealth, if we can cut through that cloud and go beyond, then we can find this wonderful equanimity, sameness, wisdom. That's the idea. That's why we're studying the Buddha families. It's a Vajrayana teaching about now, not about some long time in the future where we're going to end up. Cutting through now to find our true beauty of mind. So then when we come on to the next family, we'll see that the main obstacle is desire. It's very much to do with being, where your ego needs you to be important for other people. So that's the cloud, and it's about the use of our energy. So anyway, that's the next topic. I just want to go around this diagram. We end up with discerning wisdom, and it's about the fire element. And that's one thing. When we come to the north, and then there is to do with identifying with what we do. What do you do? What do you know? What do you have? What is your personality and magnetism? And what do you do? And then above and beyond them all, the one that's up the top is just the general sense of I am. So we'll be exploring those, carrying on in the details. The trap I didn't want to get into was just to do one family and give you one list of details, and you think, oh yes, I know all the associations, time of day and seasons and all of this. And the mudra, no, that's just factual knowledge. It's not very helpful to us. I want to keep going backwards and forwards until we get this clear understanding about what these particular teachings are aiming for. Now also, while we're on this diagram, you can see in red writing, there are 4, not 5, because there's not one for above us, the space element. 4 activities. I don't know how much Vajrayana practice you'll do over the years, but what happens is you do a practice like Guru Rinpoche. You'll get to a point where Guru Rinpoche becomes very real for you, very present. You'll get to a point where even yourself, you can shut up your ego, be very quiet, and Guru Rinpoche manifests as you, through you, within you, through you to others. But then when the practice is stabilized enough, then we reach the point where it says, now you are ready to exercise activity to help others. It's when we're authorized to teach and help others by our guru, because all of Vajrayana implies the fact that you have a guru. So then we practice these 4 activities: pacifying, increasing, magnetizing, or wrathful. So they also are linked to these directions and the elements. It's a more advanced Vajrayana topic, so I'll not be covering it with explanations in this course, but it's just to pin them in the right place. So I think we've done enough with that diagram. And where will we go from here? Associations. Okay, we've seen already that the Vajra family to the east in front of us, mirror-like wisdom, is very much associated with our heart center. Buddha Akshobhya, who embodies the mirror-like wisdom, and who is the truth of the water element. What manifests to us in so many ways as the water element, the deepest level of penetration into what is the water element is Buddha Akshobhya, is blue and very much related to our heart chakra. When we visualize the heart chakra, we think of blue or blue light, blue sphere. Buddha Ratna Sambhava, the Ratna family, is wealth. Not just material wealth, but really wealth and power go very much together. It's the ability, one word, power, another word, that is your richness. And so this is very much associated, and I think it's off screen for you, but I'm patting my navel, or just below the navel, with the navel chakra, or some people say the hara, and golden light. The hara is very much a seat of power. If you do martial arts, you'll know that the hara is very much the seat of your power. And then in Vajrayana teachings, we also know that our hara chakra is our portal, our point of connection to all of the planets, the stars, the constellations, and the energies and the movements of the world at large. It's like our inner compass, a lot of power in there. So golden light associated with the hara chakra, and Buddha Ratna Sambhava associated with it. I think we did it last time, but the Ratna family is very much associated with the end of summer, beginning of autumn. We had the example of the rotting log. Now, I think I need to fill in the details before moving on. With the Vajra family, we did the thrown animal was the elephant, and I explained why. With the Ratna family, it's a horse. So Buddha Ratnasambhava's throne is held up by horses. Now, I don't think you need this as practical knowledge, that if one day you come across a Buddha and you need to check out the throne to see which one's this, oh, you've got a horse, you must be Ratnasambhava. It's not practical traveler's knowledge, it's symbolic. Why is it symbolic? Is because the horse in the old days was about the most valuable possession you could have. It was a sign of wealth. It was big wealth. So, and one can develop it, but mainly that is the reason. Yeah. So that's another thing about the Ratna family. The Vajra family, when will you actually achieve mirror-like wisdom? Because with each family, we have to also look at when will we really first get a taste or the reality of this wisdom. The real mirror-like wisdom you won't get until you are Buddha. From the first bodhisattva level up through the all 10 bodhisattva levels, you get something of it. But really, because it is a mirror in which there is a reflection of everyone and everything throughout time and space. There is nothing outside of it. You'll only get that when you're Buddha. It's often quoted, but even if you're a 10th level bodhisattva, like Manjusri, like Maitreya, like Karmapa, it says your realization compared to the Buddha's realization will be like the amount of water gathered in an ox's hoofprint compared to the ocean. I don't know if you can take a pipette from your chemistry laboratory and go and find an ox's hoofprint and siphon out the water and see how many cc's it is. It won't be that many. And then go over to the Atlantic Ocean and think about it. Think. You can take the ox's water with you in a jar and think 10th level bodhisattva. Then you can look at the ocean. Then look back. And then think 10th level bodhisattva and me. How far to go? So far to go. An ox's hoofprint and the ocean. So when the last obscuration, the last veil goes, like it did for Buddha Shakyamuni on the night before his enlightenment, then the real mirror-like wisdom in which everyone throughout time and space, all the past, all the future, everything is there perfectly. But we get something of it from first bodhisattva level onwards. So that's already good. Now, when we come to Ratnasambhava, the Ratna family, the sameness wisdom, we will get that in its fullness. Or it's looking up at the 8th bodhisattva level. Because the way you get from the 7th level to the 8th level through all of your purification work is that duality goes. This inner feeling, even if we don't like it, even if we say it, whatever we say about it, you can't help it, but you feel like yourself and other people feel like other. And you feel like you, and the world feels like the world. And you can tell yourself it's all the same, oneness and non-duality, and you can, but you still feel separate. That separation goes so deep, and it's been reinforced by millions of zillions of thoughts and realities and experiences. That goes. to get you from the 7th to the 8th level. And from the 8th through the 9th and 10th and to Buddhahood, there is no more duality. So sameness wisdom in its fullness comes there. It comes as a genuine experience, but not in its fullness at the first bodhisattva level. So I needed to share that too. You will have noticed that we've not gone on to the Padma family today. That was on the program. Sorry, but I can't, I have to say what I feel I need to say, and I'm not very organized. I wanted to conclude, I don't know how relevant it is, but I think there's a great blessing in it, with a bit of Mila Repa, except that I'm always too optimistic. I prepare so much for these talks thinking, oh, I must mention that, and I must say this. Oh yeah, and that's really important. And then the time goes away. So along with what I'm going to share with you is a whole story, and it's a beautiful story, and it's got Mila Repa songs that go with it, and so I have to make it short. And this is a story about Mila Repa when he was isolated for a winter. So he went to a town, I think it's called Nyanyang, and he'd already been there sometimes, and the people wanted him to stay. They always did. You can't blame them. And he didn't want to stay. He wanted to go up to meditate. So they gave him some supplies, enough for a month or something like that. And he went to the cave where his teacher had taught him to meditate. And so they thought, we'd go up, take him supplies every month, a bit more fresh stuff. But that winter, the most howling storm came along, and it raged for days and days and days and days and weeks. So he ended up isolated by the snows in that cave for 6 months. And the villagers were devastated because they'd seen the weather, even from their village, it had been so hard. And they thought, alone up there with just one piece of cloth for a robe, he's dead. But at least we should go up once the spring came and the snows melted and sort of gather his bones and make a reliquary or something. So then a party of them went up the hill feeling very, very sad. And then on the way up, they saw a snow leopard bouncing on the rocks, and they thought, oh no, it's even worse than that. Probably the leopard ate him while he was in retreat. And then, so they plod up and they get to the cave, and there they find Mila Repa, very, very happy and singing, and the food they'd given him for 1 month, he was cooking it as a sort of a meal for them, because they'd been up a big mountain. He wanted to give them something hot. So then they were amazed. They said, but how could you? And what about the leopard? Didn't you see the leopard? And then he said, oh, that leopard was me. I just thought I'd trot down the hillside as a leopard to see how far you were getting on, because you seem to be taking your time getting up here. And then they said, but what happened? Then he sings this wonderful song. It's long, very dramatic story about how the wind slashed and the snow fell, and how he had this thin robe and he was practicing his tummo practice of inner heat, and then how he was fed by celestial beings, and so on and so on. So anyway, the little bit of song I want to share from you comes after that long account. And it's when they start asking questions, and he gives some advice, which is a bit relevant sort of to this course. But I wanted to say one thing in passing as well, and it's this. It's a bit awkward when we read about the past and Mila Repa and miracles, and we think, oh, that's so wonderful, and something sometimes inside us thinks, yeah, that's possible. But when we look around today, we think, well, where's it gone? Where are the present ones who can turn into leopards and run down hillsides? Where are the present ones who can live, on the grace of heavenly dakinis? divine food that you don't need to chew and swallow and do all the rest of it with. So I wanted to just share with you one thing. My wife, Katya, when she went on pilgrimage to India in 1979, met one of Akon Rinpoche's nuns from Tibet. And for many years, she'd been living on one spoonful of rice a week. In good shape, not a bag of bones, healthy, very nice, ordinary person to talk to. But she'd done retreat in Akon Rinpoche's nunneries. She'd done a practice called Chutlen, where you learn to live on gradually nothing. And you have to eat stones. You have your own set of stones that you pass. They're small enough to go through your digestive system. You pass them out, you wash them, and it's to keep your digestive tract working, the muscles, so that you've got something going through. Now, this is somebody, I didn't meet her. I had to stay and look after Samiling during that pilgrimage. But she was a real person who had a skill like that. So there are many, these things still exist. But anyway, Mila Repa sang, once they started asking questions, he sang a song that's all about sixes, six this, six that, and so on. But he talks about the mind poisons. So he says, if anger, so here we mean hostility, if anger is strong, that's the fetter of the hell realm. Your anger, your hostility could take you to rebirth in those states. But just now in itself, it's a prison. It's an aggressive prison for you. In itself, it's hell, but in manifestation, it can take you to hell. If there is great avarice, that's the fetter of the praetors, hungry ghosts, hungry spirits. When you're in a state of avarice, you are a bit like a hungry ghost already, but if you make karma based on that, you can be reborn as a hungry ghost. If there's ignorance, this is the fetter of the animals. Same thing. When we live in ignorance, we are humans by definition because of this body, but our lives, how different are they from the animals? Mating, nesting, feeding. So much of our life is about mating, about nesting, making a home, about food, feeding our senses, satisfactions. Like animals, we follow our emotions, we let them govern us, we get angry at this, we attack this one, we lust after that one. If passion is great, he says, that's the fetter of the humans. If there's strong jealousy, it's the fetter of the asuras, the demigods. And if there's strong pride, that's the fetter of the devas. These are the 6 fetters that bind, that block freedom. So that's what he says. Then a bit further along, when he's talking about, well, how do we break those fetters? I don't know if you've ever been bound. I know a few people who've been bound by robbers. It's horrible to be bound, to be locked up. You can't get out. To be tied up, you can't even use your hands or your feet. Fetters. So then, how do we break out of them? What wonderful freedom when we do. So in a further verse, he goes very deep. Now, that first verse, you know all those ones, the mind poisons and where they can take you, the 6 realms. So what he's talking about here is very much related to our 5 Buddha wisdoms and the very meaning of these 5 dhyani Buddhas. Simultaneity is the primordial expanse. Simultaneity of what? Simultaneity means 2 things are simultaneous. Inside and outside. Perceiver, percept. You, me. Subject, object. When they disappear in the sameness. Primordial expanse. To be free of outer and inner is the expanse we call awareness. To be free from clear, Vajra family, clear, or obscured, is the expanse of what is called wisdom. What pervades everything is Dharma. To be free of movement and change is the expanse of Bindu. Now, Bindu I can't explain. I don't even think if I had half an hour I could explain it to you. It's an experiential thing. But what could you say? If you've ever turned a kaleidoscope, right, you could do it endlessly and it makes this pattern, that pattern, this pattern. Change, change, change. But then that's what a kaleidoscope does. So once you've got a kaleidoscope, you can do that and change, change, change. But that's kaleidoscope at work. Little colored dots coming together in different ways. Bindu means colored dot, colored sphere. It's about energies, manifesting, energies inside us, manifesting as outer realities. Unbroken continuity is the expanse of experience. So our yogic experience changes from day to day, moment to moment. But there is a continuity of our Buddha mind, our center, the serenity, the blessing of the lineage, Buddha, along with every experience. So he says each of these is an expanse, the expanse of what is primordial, what is awareness, what is wisdom, what is Dharma, what is Bindu, and what is experience. And he says these are 6 companions of the real point of it all. That's a very, very deep verse. To my mind, it's related to this, and I'm just imagining those very, very lucky people of Nyanyan who imagine they went up the mountain to find bones and relics. They find their teachers alive. They're completely mind blown by what he can do, be a leopard, and the fact that he's got a meal for them. And then he's suddenly giving them teachings. Gosh, they were so lucky. It must have been marvelous. So let's hope that by me singing it, if I've got any voice left at all, let's hope that some of Mila Repa's blessing connects with us and helps us with our studies of the Buddha families. Jemela, je pardon, jela, son wan depso. Yang she jena, yang zhu. Sena jena jnana na jun son the chan na Tradol Archena Lamen Raja Chena Layen Dine touching joy Yon je panyomelon Chinon me pa repulon Saldrin me pa yeshelon Chabdan champo chujilon Pom jurum hebe Teblon Jun chemeba Nyan Jilon Ledan Tenchen Long Sonam die Tomche Sikpani Tomnenye Pedranam Pamchene Jega Nachipala Chukpaye Sipe Sole Droma Dromaresho Jancho Semcho Rinpoche Maje Panam Jejochi Jepan Nyampame Padam Kongme Kongdo Darwaresho